I'm going to try to... The wall just farted. Briefly address Hillary Putnam's twin Earth thought experiment. So I'm going to read um, from the Wikipedia article on Hillary Putnam, the section Philosophy of Language, the first part, Semantic Externalism. One of Putnam's contributions to philosophy of language is his claim that meaning just ain't in the head. His views on meaning, first laid out in Meaning and Reference, 1973, then in The Meaning of Meaning, 75, use his twin Earth thought experiment to illustrate that a term's meanings are determined by factors outside the mind. Twin Earth shows this, according to Putnam, since on Twin Earth everything is identical to Earth except that its lakes, rivers, and oceans are filled with XYZ rather than H2O. Consequently, when an Earthling, Frederick, uses the Earth English word water, it has a different meaning from the Twin Earth English word water when used by his physically identical, and apparently culturally identical, twin Froderick on Twin Earth. Since Frederick and Froderick are physically indistinguishable when they utter their respective words, and since their words have different meanings, meaning cannot be determined solely by what is in their heads. This led Putnam to adopt a version of semantic externalism with regard to meaning and mental content. The philosopher of mind and language, Donald Davidson, despite his many differences of opinion with Putnam, wrote that semantic externalism constituted an anti-subjectivist revolution in philosophers' way of seeing the world. Since Descartes' time, philosophers had been concerned with proving knowledge from the basis of subjective experience. Thanks to Putnam, Saul Kripke, fucking hell, Tyler Burge, and others, Davidson said, philosophy could now take the objective realm for granted and start questioning the alleged truths of subjective experience. So, I have a fundamental problem with this, which is that the twin Earth material that is not water, but is something else, in order for everything else to be apparently the same, this other material has to operate the same way that water does. It has to have all of the same interactions and behaviors as water. So as far as a person is concerned, they're indistinguishable. So the meaning isn't the chemical composition. The meaning is what this shit does. Right? So if XYZ, if this material behaved differently, then you potentially couldn't drink it. You couldn't mix it with, you couldn't use it as a solvent for the same exact things that you can use water as a solvent for. Oil would not necessarily float on top of it. Fermentation of alcohol wouldn't work the same. Erosion wouldn't work the same. There's a lot of things water does that are special to water, right? It would freeze at a different temperature. It might not expand the same way when it freezes. And if its expansion rate is different when it freezes, that's going to affect weathering on rocks and all sorts of things. Like the way hoarfrost grows would be different. The texture and mass of snow would be different. If it behaves differently, then you cannot mistake it for water. And in that case, Froderick's word for water and Frederick's word for water are distinguishable. If they're indistinguishable, then the meaning doesn't refer to the chemical composition, and they're not talking about a different thing. They will recognize the other Earth's water as water. because it operates as water. So I don't see that he has a point. It's kind of like the whole the horror thing where what if like while you're asleep or something, somebody like changed, or while you're at work, somebody just changed everything in your house and made it for an exact copy of it. Ooh, why would that be? Like, okay, if I can't tell the difference, what the hell's the difference? Right? Like, swap out this guitar for an exact copy of this guitar. If I can't tell, if it, it's aged the same way, it behaves the same way, it's identical in every way. It's the same thing. I don't care. Why would you care? If you can't perceive a difference, there isn't a difference as far as your life concerns. As worrying about that is just psychotic. Right? Like when you get an oil change in your car, are you like, oh my god, it's different oil. That's a different car entirely. No. That's fucking crazy. You get new tires. It's a completely different car. What? The window in your house breaks and you replace it. Completely different house now because it's very slightly different. But it's an exact copy of the window as far as we can tell. It looks exactly the same as it did before. We can't tell any difference. What? What are you worrying about? And it doesn't become not a window because it's a different window. It's still a window. And that glass that's in there now is still the window glass. Even though it's different window glass than it was a week ago. What? What are you doing?